Folks, the usual Danny Dimes and Primetime episode is going to be a little bit different. It is 11:10 at night. There's a minute 21 left in the game. But you know what? Big Rat and I, we still troop it out because we love all you folks. I'm going to ask you, how'd you enjoy the bye week?
It was good. It was good to not watch my team play for a week. It was a nice, pleasant experience.
And for me, obviously, we know last week you guys kind of, I don't want to say got right, but you guys, look, you guys were the better team last week. You got the win. But today, for my team, there's two sides to the coin. One, I really like myself from Drake. The one interception, so he threw two picks. One was just like, look, rookie throw, that's going to happen. The second one, though, was just ball. That was just football god, ball luck. Like, I don't know how that happened. But from what I saw, I can look at it and say they can build on something going forward with his play overall. It's just the refereeing was such a wet blanket on the game today. Ronald Torber and his crew were just atrocious.
Yeah. And from what I saw, I seemed to enjoy it as well. Like, he looked impressive. He made big boy throws. They moved the ball. They had big plays. And, you know, sure, there were some mistakes, but there actually weren't, like, as many as you would have feared, you know, given the circumstances. So, yeah, I think it was an encouraging start, and see where it goes from here.
Exactly. And I'm going to say this about this game right now because I got to see a bit of it. Also, for folks, those are where I'm back at my parents' house, my former studio, so that's why it's a little different. But tomorrow night with one Sophie Wall, I'll be back to the regular studio, and then in 2 weeks when this gentleman's back on with me for another day, possibly last Danny Dimes in primetime ever, he'll be back with me there. And now I'm just hoping that the Bengals can hold on to the -3.5. But from what I saw today, honestly, Patriots aside, look, there was some good, there was some bad, but if I were to ask you which performance was the most red flag to you, would it be Jacksonville, would it be Dallas, or would it be Cleveland? Or not even Cleveland, Philadelphia?
Yeah, so Dallas was playing a really good team that had something to prove. I was on the Cowboys this week, so I was wrong. So I'm not trying to like completely kill all the credit, but they were playing a really good team. You know, sure, the scope of the blowout was like severe, but it's normally not like that bad. So I was, I feel like the score is going to get a lot of talking points, but I think Dallas is overall okay. They beat a really good Steelers defense on the road last week. They're still like within range in their division. The Commanders lost today. So I wouldn't say that's too much of a red flag. They laid an egg. The Lions came out hot. The Lions bullied them. The Lions do that to a lot of teams. I'm not ready to write off Dallas' season because of that. The Eagles was concerning, but not surprising. And they did need a blocked kick in order for the game to be that close. So I would probably say the Jaguars, just because it seemed like yesterday there were signs of life. And it seemed like yesterday there were signs of life. And I mean, not yesterday, last week there were signs of life. And this week they kind of regressed in that sense. They went from making you think they were going to make something of their season to just totally falling apart. And that to me is concerning, especially when the safety, Andre Sisco, says that there was a lot of quit in the locker room after the game. That's concerning. That's concerning that, you know, I guess it shouldn't surprise us now for a team that's 1-5, but it really does seem like this is just one of the worst teams in the NFL, which is a team that had won 9 games each of the last 2 years. So, yeah, it's pretty surprising.
Yeah, and then for all you sickos in London who want to wake up early and join me, be ahead, go my guest, when there's 2 1-5 teams taking on one another. I'll say this, though. I have liked everything I've seen from Chicago over the last couple of weeks. They're a team that I know I was talking to Jared about this on Thursday. He wasn't totally sold on them yet, but I told him these are the kind of games the Bears need to win if they want to be a team that's contending in December, to where those, you know how they have like, basically after they play the Patriots week 10, I believe it is, all but 2 games are against the NFC North, and the non-2 are against Seattle and San Francisco. So now instead of one of those, like, I believe they have in December, I believe they have a Monday night against the Vikings. Mm-hmm. Instead of that game being a must-win, you know what? Now, hey, because you beat the Jags, that game no longer becomes a must-win. That game is, hey, if you win it, it could just help catapult you, but if you lose, it's not going to kill your season. Other things and notes I saw from today, look, or even going back to Thursday night, I called that get right spot for me. I had a beautiful parlay on that game. I don't know if I told you about, but I had George Kittle touchdown. I had George Kittle 40+ yards and San Francisco -3.5. So I was happy there. But I want to go into tomorrow night because tomorrow night focuses two teams not in our division with Greg and Danny. Have you ever seen a game like this so early in the season where both teams need to get right, but you're not sure who's going to get right?
Yes. It's interesting because the Bills, if they lose, will have lost 3 straight. And then the Jets are obviously so chaotic. So, yeah, I can't remember the last time you need both teams in a get-right spot, and they're both, like, relevant teams. They're both teams that matter. So, yeah, I've never seen anything like this before either. I'm fascinated by it. I'm on the Jets. I'm buying into the fired head coach bump, the renewed excitement from the fan base. But I think it's going to be close. I know you're on the Bills, and it wouldn't shock me at all if the Bills were to win. It's, the Bills are kind of, if this was I think this is a good test for the Bills in the sense of if the Bills team is the same Bills team of the last few years, and that's going to sound contradictory to some people because they've lost to the Jets in New York the last 2 years. But if they're that 13-win Bills team, 12-win Bills team that we know from the last few years, they bounce back and they win this game even in adverse circumstances. If they are a worse version of the Bills, then maybe they do lose and they lose 3 straight and the headlines go crazy. So I think it'll be a good test to see how good is this Buffalo team. Is this the 12-win Buffalo team, or is this now like a 10-9-win Buffalo team? We do not know, and I guess we'll find out.
I'm in that exact same boat too, because after this as well, I know the Jets have the Patriots again in a couple weeks, which should be a win for them. Look, we know what happened a few weeks ago, but that game next Sunday night is ultra important now because we saw a Steelers team bounce back. I gotta say, they played very well today. Justin Fields, look, it wasn't pretty, but they got the job done against a feeble Las Vegas Raiders team. You and I both know how I feel about the Raiders. I feel like it's going to get worse before it gets any better there. But with a game like this, with the Jets and even the Bills, no matter who loses this game, there's no hiding. This isn't a 1 o'clock. Like if this game was today, you could possibly get away with it as we have a puppy appearance on the show. But when you have two teams in this, like if this was a 1 o'clock game, hey, whoever loses, it's not the end of the world. It is what it is. But the fact that you have this Monday night spot, guess what everyone's going to be talking about Tuesday? Oh, did the Jets get right and Jeff Albrecht looks great in his first game as head coach? Did Sean McDermott lose? And because I feel like the headlines will be more severe if Buffalo loses, just because it's going to be now, Buffalo's in a tailspin, Buffalo's panicking. But if the Jets lose, it's just going to be, same old Jets, where it's just kind of like, same year, new thing. What's going to happen with them? So I only picked Buffalo just because I trust them more, but I'm not like picking Buffalo. It's not like if I had to put a confidence meter, I'd give it like a 6, where it's like, I'm not fully confident in it, but I like at the end of the day, it's who I trust more.
And I think you have reason to trust them. They have stability over the course of like 4 to 5 years. It's not like this, new team out of nowhere that just fired their coach and that is in like organizational disarray. I mean, it is understandable. I would feel more secure for the Jets if the Bills hadn't just lost 2 straight.
Yes.
Now, it's hard to see the Bills losing 3 straight, but it was also hard to see the Bills get beat as badly as they did by the Ravens a few weeks ago. So which Bills team is this, Like clearly their demolition of the Jaguars means less and less the more removed we get from that game. So, yeah, we'll see. It should be interesting. I'm excited.
And then I want to go back quickly to Thursday night for a second, just because San Francisco came up on the screen and they have 2 huge games coming up.
Yeah.
This might be a hot take, but is Brock Purdy one of the more disrespected quarterbacks in the NFL? Because you always think he's not going to do it, he can't get it done, and then he just goes out there and works harder and gets it done.
He's like my quarterback. Like people don't attribute the success to him; they attribute the success to the supporting cast. And this year, there's no McCaffrey. Debo has missed time. Ayuk has played, but he hasn't played very well. And Brock has made the most of it. There's a stat that I think only 25% of his yards are coming from yak, which is like the lowest for a quarterback in like 20 years or something like that. And it's normally the opposite in San Francisco. Normally in San Francisco, the quarterbacks get the most yak as a percentage of their passing yards compared to other quarterbacks. So yeah, I mean, he's playing well. He's playing a lot better. And yeah, he's a top 10 quarterback this year, at least based on this year. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just because I look at it where I feel like every year he's that player that, that everyone in the NFL, they're waiting for him to fail. You're a Simpsons fan. You remember the episode where Homer had the whole persona of the TV character, and there's that meme where it's like, look, everybody, he's getting ready to do something stupid. I feel like that's the kind of thing everyone puts on Brock Purdy. I saw that game as a get-right game. Not even a get-right game for San Francisco. That was more of a they're going to establish who they are. Because I said this, and you talk about divisional play all the time. Going into that game, Arizona is 2-0 in division. Seattle is now 0-1, and the Rams are 1-1. San Francisco falling to 0-3 would make it incredibly difficult for them to win that division. I still think they can win it if they were on the table and go 4-2 against the NFC West for the rest of the year. So that's just a general, you had to have a game to now where it's like, hey, everything's fine with San Francisco. But I did see a fun – so you brought up a stat earlier about Yak, and I'm bringing up a stat now because we know Randy asked for some stats. Did you know that this is the first time since the 2002 realignment that a team in a single – all 4 teams in a division have won 4 games by week 5?
I did not know that. And those same 4 teams also have the highest point differential in the NFL right now, which is pretty crazy.
Which I'm going to say this, and I don't know if this is a take, but if I had to pick a team right now who I can trust to actually win it all, I'm really starting to think it's Detroit. I know they had a terrible loss of Aiden Hutchinson today with the broken tibia. Yeah. That was just a very badly timed, gruesome injury, especially too, he was potentially having a DPOY year. I'm not even afraid to say that. But they're the kind of team that they can develop a next man up mentality, and taking away touchdowns from David Montgomery is like taking a big juicy steak out of a lion's mouth. You're just not going to do it. He's just not going to give it up. I feel like Detroit, they're very good to spread the ball around. Defensively, they are much improved this year. And I really feel like for them, it's not an all or nothing year, but it's more of a, you're probably going to lose a lot of your coaching staff this offseason. I think Ben Johnson's probably going to finally get a job. Aaron Glenn might get a job. That's one name to watch out for in NFL coaching circles. So where with Detroit now, this is kind of the, you not go for it, but this is kind of feels like their best opportunity to make the run that their fans have been yearning for 60 plus years.
They look like one of the 3 best teams in the NFL, like based on their resume. And their only loss was by 4 points to the Bucs in a game that they went like 1 for 7 in the red zone, where like Dan Campbell, like there was a mistake where they like sent out the field goal unit, and there was like a 10-second runoff that prevented them from getting the field goal off in time. And then because of that, they couldn't kick a field goal in the last drive of the game because they were down by 4 instead of 1. So yeah, like it was a game they very easily could have won. And there are other games besides that game haven't been all that close. So yeah, like they're a really, really, really impressive team. And the Aiden Hutchinson thing does hurt. It is a big deal. It's not a position they have a lot of depth at. So it's not just that he was great, but they were also like really reliant on him. So yeah, it's some adversity to fight through. We'll see when he comes back. If he comes back at all. I mean, it's broken tibia. I assume probably not, but we'll see. But even more so than that, I get the sense, I don't know this for sure, but I get the sense that they have the DNA of like a tough-minded team that can maybe overcome something like that in the short term, at least like for the regular season. Now, their playoff outcome, that's different. But for the regular season, can they survive without him just by like toughness and guys stepping up? Yes, I think so. But in a playoff setting, they might need him to ultimately get where they want to go.
Yes, I agree with that. I think they said he'd probably be back in December. That's a rumor. I think I heard that today there was a report from Dan Campbell that he might be back in December. We'll see if that comes to fruition or not. Looking ahead to next week, that game against Minnesota is all important now for them. That's a huge game. That's a big. I don't even want. I love these kind of games because you know, let's say loser leaves town, get right game. This is a true who are you for both teams. I believe it's the first divisional game. No, actually, Minnesota played Green Bay. So it's a true test for both. You know, it's going to be a raucous environment. We know when the NFC North gets together, it's a lot of fun. But I looked at the opening line, and Minnesota's a 2.5-point favorite. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But one other thing I want to point out coming up quickly. So I was looking ahead to some primetime games. It's like Jets and Steelers is next Sunday, which isn't sexy on paper, but I'll still watch it. There is a Sunday night football game in 3 weeks that I think the NFL needs to flex out sooner than later. And that is the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yikes. Man, how did something like that ever even get in primetime? And I think you said 3 weeks. Is that the November 1st weekend?
Yeah.
Okay, well, on October 27th, so not this weekend, there's a Bears-Commanders game that is not in primetime that Amina Kimes today was tweeting she wants that flexed into primetime. And if that was the game, that'd be an easy thing to pull out. But yeah, it's not that simple. I think the game that night is like Cowboys-Niners, which they'll never.
You're not, no. Yeah, no. Yeah. Even though it's San Francisco, you're not flexing. It takes a lot to flex Dallas at a primetime. I believe the only time they got flexed out was that it was supposed to be that game a few years ago. But that's because Dak was hurt and they were terrible. I'm looking at the 425 slate right now. I would probably move Bengals and Eagles out of 425 to 1 o'clock, and I'd move Commanders and Bears into the 425 spot.
Yeah. That also works too.
Yeah.
Like that.
And then the only candidates I look at for the game, to flex out of Sunday Night Football. So that week you have Ravens, Broncos, which probably no. Raiders and Bengals, no. Titans, Patriots, if someone at NBC is a Patriots fan. Saints, Panthers, no. Cowboys, Falcons, no. You guys in Buffalo, it's an option.
Potentially. Yeah, I would think the Dolphins have to have a respectable record by then. So they would probably have to win next week without Tua, which might be a challenge. Then they would have to beat the Cardinals the week after, where it looks like Tua's coming back. When we played the Steelers a few years ago, that was Tua's first game back from a concussion. So if Tua doesn't play the Cardinals game, it could be like Primetime, check out his return, kind of hook. But yeah, I would say it's a good candidate.
The one that I like the most, but I don't think I think it's a Fox exclusive, is Lions Packers. It's at 425 right now. But I feel like when people, like even next week, I remember talking to Jared about this because it's Niners and Chiefs next week at 425. And I told him CBS and Fox will bid on certain games that they're like, we're going to give a little bit extra money because we want this on our network. But there's one game week 10 of the Lions that I know they whooped the dog shit out of my team today. But Lions and Texans.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this right now. I like what the Texans look good today. If you look at their resume, though, they don't have a signature win against, like, sure, they beat Buffalo, but Buffalo's a little, like, still, it's a 3-point game. If you look at the other ones, Colts, an early Bears team who we didn't know who they were at the time, Jags, Patriots, there's not a win. They don't have, I don't know if this is me being biased, but they don't have a signature win on their record yet. They don't have that win where you can look at it and go, pointed to, like today, Detroit has that win. Minnesota has, hell, I would say all but the Giants game. I would say their win against Dallas today, Minnesota. I would say their win against Houston, their win against San Francisco, their win against Green Bay. That's 3 signature wins right there. So like, you're beating good opponents. So for Houston, I need to see you beat an opponent of that caliber in that spot, because if you let them come into your house in that spot and dominate you, who's going to buy into you come January? Like I said, I think Houston's good. Tank Dell annoyed me today, which is a good thing for the NFL standards. And Stephon Diggs likes to torch the Patriots. It's just pain. But the best player from Houston so far that has impressed me was Will Anderson today, with what he was able to do against a very feeble Patriots offensive line. So that's just one thing I want to look out for there. But so far, look, it's still this NFL season, though. There's still a lot of teams where I look at where I'm like, I don't know. But another team I want to point out right now to you, I'm continuing to be right about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I don't care what anyone thinks about that.
Yeah, no, they've been impressive. 50 points, I mean, that's worth your attention for sure.
Yeah. I know we're kind of just like going back and forth with everything like that, but so I know I'm going to ask you, how'd the Fab Five go this week for you?
This was not a good week for the Fab Five. So Fab Five last week went 3-2. The week before it went 5-0. So we had been doing really well. We were 12-4 in our last 16 picks. We were scorching hot. And then this week we picked the Cowboys, which not only did we get wrong, there was this gambling guy on Twitter who actually released a 2-minute video explaining that if you pick the Cowboys, you need to stop betting for a week as a timeout penalty. Because he was like, I was on Detroit, and it was the most obvious spot in the world. Like, the Cowboys have the defensive injuries, and the Lions got screwed in the game last year, and the Lions had a week rest because they were off a bye week. Like, if you put the Cowboys, you're an idiot, and you should just stop betting. So that was me, the person who bet the Cowboys, who lost 47-9 in their biggest home loss in like 50 years or whatever. I thought, you're getting the home team that is an underdog that I think people have been a little hard on this year, and they also have a 0-2 record at home before this game. So I just didn't think they would go 0-3, and they did. And they went 0-3 like pretty decisively. This team was undefeated at home last year until the playoff game, and now they're 0-3 in Jerry World. It's very strange. So that was a bad pick. I picked your Patriots. I think my mistake, because I had some faith that Drake May would play all right, as opposed to what most people were thinking. However, I guess where I was wrong was, one, the Patriots defense not as good as I thought. And two, the Joe Mixon coming back to the Texans makes a difference. Like they're a markedly different team if Joe Mixon is healthy. versus when he's not, because it's the difference between them being able to run the ball and not run the ball. And when they can run the ball, they can get really dangerous with their early down offense. So that was a mistake. So that was another loss. I picked the Panthers +6, which was looking okay for most of that game, and then it just kind of fell apart late at the end. That was another loss. And then my win was Ravens -6.5. And I'm actually proud of that win because I feel like a lot of amateur, not amateur as in it's like a bad side. I think people take the Commanders as a totally fine side. I think it takes some chutzpah to take a big minus against a good team, against a 4-1 team. And I did. And, ultimately, I think both people were right. The people who bet on the Commanders and the people who bet on the Ravens. It was a 6.5-point spread. The game closed at 7. So, yeah, it was like, I guess everyone was right. But I think it takes a special chutzpah to take the -6.5 favorite against a really hot team. So I'm really proud for getting that one right. So I went 1-3. And then the 5th pick in the Fab 5 is Jets 2.5 tomorrow. And we shall see. It'll be the difference between me going 2-3 and me going 1-4.
True. There were 2 picks today that I made that I was very proud of myself for. One of them, Colts +2.5, and they won the game outright.
Nice.
Look, I don't know why they were an underdog against. I feel like a lot of people were just thinking Tennessee on the spot right there. The one thing I'll say with the Commanders, because Jared and I were both on Baltimore, but that's because we thought, it's a letdown spot for Washington. Not even letdown. It come back to earth, where it's kind of like, hey, you're not going to have these like sunshine and rainbow wins every single week. You're still a great team. Jaden Daniels still look good, but you're going up against an elite team. That's what's going to happen to you. The other one, though, was Chargers -3.
Nice.
Bounce back for them. Not even let that. Same thing. Broncos come back to earth. I will say this, though. I am on the Broncos for Thursday night. I know I don't like them, but I'm taking Peyton against his former team. Look what Peyton's done so far to the AFC West, to the NFC South, excuse me. Embarrassed Tampa Bay a couple weeks ago. He knows the division.
And this is going to be in New Orleans, which will be
Yes.
juicy. It'll be juicy. Sean Payton's return back home. Rattler played well today, but Rattler against the Broncos defense that's currently top 5 in the NFL right now, that blitzes a lot. You really have to wonder, is Rattler ready for the challenge that like a blitzing aggressive defense will present, especially on a short week with little preparation time? So I would slightly lean the Broncos direction too. I think that I like the under in that game. I don't think either team is going to move the ball all that much. But yeah, I think Rattler versus the Broncos defense is going to be a tougher challenge than Bo Nix going against New Orleans.
I'm going to say 17-13, probably like that kind of score.
Sounds good.
Right now, the over-under is at 37.5. So one thing to note there. But no, with LA, I think they're one of those teams. Look, what happened to Jim Harbaugh was terrible. Like, we don't know what happened. Did he shit his pants? Did he have a medical thing?
No, he had atrial flutter. He had a heart condition. I did love the conspiracy theory because he did change his pants when he came back outside. But apparently he has a flutter, which is a cardiac arrhythmia where your heart is not beating properly, and the upper chambers of your heart are beating a lot faster than they're supposed to. And it can cause you to have chest palpitations and maybe even chest pain when your heart's like going like this. You start to get fatigued because your heart is not pumping enough blood to your brain properly because it's moving so quickly like this that you feel the palpitations and you're also kind of getting drowsy as well. So they had to do an EKG. They had to give him water. But then, yeah, maybe he also shit his pants. But at the very least, like a flutter is what he told us.
Medical lessons from Dr. Big Red over here, who actually is in medical school right now. By the way,
not a doctor yet, but in training.
Yes. No, and then with the Chargers, I was just going to say this too. Like, look, it's the exact same thing. That was don't worry about them. They had a couple bad games. They're going to be fine. They're going to be good. Next week, they play Monday night. We have 2 Monday night games. We have Baltimore versus Tampa, which is is it weird if I say it's a sexy matchup?
Not weird. Oh, it's fine. It's a good matchup.
And then Chargers and Cardinals. I think that's going to be a very fun game to watch.
Yeah, I like both those games. And then the Sunday night game, Jets Steelers, should be somewhat interesting. A lot of drama involved there.
The one thing I'll say is, though, the start times for the Monday night doubleheader, it's 8:15 and it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Because the Cardinals game is in the West Coast, right?
Yeah. Which makes sense. But, like, at the same time, too, I'm just like, I'll probably be fighting for my life towards the end of the game because we're older now. And like Big Red and I are doing right now is it's 11:35 at night.
Yeah.
Other games next week to look forward to. We'll get more into this later this week. Houston versus Green Bay. I think it's going to be a very fun matchup. Same thing, too. That's going to be a who are you for both teams. Green Bay looked really good today against Arizona. Yeah. I don't have faith in Arizona. Look, I know Danny, I've been saying, like, playoff team. I've been saying, like, hey, I think they're going to be fun, but I think we're seeing that against better teams, they're going to have their moments, but against divisional and against weaker teams, those are the games they're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Another game for a who are you test for both Seattle versus Atlanta. I think Seattle's coming back to earth a little bit with their games where, look, they had their first 3 games where you realize who they played. They played you guys with a ton of injuries plus Tua being out. They played a very bad Patriot team, and they played Bo Nixon's first game. Since then, they've lost to the Giants, which Big Rat, you and I, plus 7.5. We told everyone. We didn't think they were going to win, but plus 7.5, we can hang our hats on that. And the Detroit and San Francisco. So you lost to the good teams. Cleveland versus Cincinnati, which I don't even know what to think of Cleveland anymore. Mina Kimes tweeted this out today that Andrew Berry got an extension this offseason. With Cleveland, I think you have to start selling off your pieces and just getting draft picks and then realizing we're stuck with Deshaun. We're going to have to build cheaper around him and just have a couple years of not even pain, but just, general mediocrity. You're in purgatory. I know they're 1-5, but like, it can be turned around. And even, I'm just going to skip ahead. Miami versus Indy, that's intriguing. That's intriguing for both. But have you seen a fan online who sings the songs for the Colts games every week?
Yeah.
This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. I can't look away, and I want to see what he comes up with because it's not even like it's like chirping or anything. It's just it's adorably harmless of what he does.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was happy that the Colts won today. I was kind of rooting for them because I thought if they had lost again and been 2-4, the next week at home would have been like a season on the line spot where they probably would have won. But now they're feeling good. They won a road division game. They're doing well. They're 3-3, and I think Richardson's going to play next week and not this week, which I think will help the Dolphins' chances of winning that game. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with how it all played out. The Dolphins coming off a bye. If the Dolphins can win that game, it almost, not quite, it almost puts their season back to normal, like that. Because they probably would have gone 3-3 the first 6 games, even with Tua. Now, granted, they probably would have won that Titans game, or at least been way more competitive in that Titans game. So that one we can chalk up to being like a missed opportunity. But 3-3 through 6 games is not a season ender. Like, that's totally fine. Like, that's like an average, normal NFL season. That doesn't preclude the rest of the season from being accessed. So if they could somehow win, I think the season gets back on track. If they lose and they're 2-4, like, the season's not over. It's just their margin for error is just going to be so low. Like, they can only lose like 2 more games the rest of the year. So it's just going to be tight.
You guys in Cincinnati are in that similar territory now to where I'm going to call next week because like Cleveland, we can already write off. That's just something we can accept. But I'm going to call Cincinnati. That's a must-win game for the Bengals against the Browns because I know Joe Burrow has struggled against Cleveland. I think especially too in Cleveland. I don't think he's ever won.
Yeah, the Cleveland was, I think the stat was 6-0 against Burrow, something like that. I don't think he's beaten Cleveland, period. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. Because in 2021, there was a game that Cleveland beat the brakes off the Bengals in Cincinnati. And they rematched like the last week of the regular season, and Burrow didn't even play. I don't think Joe Burrow's ever beaten the Browns. I think that's true.
Okay, so I'm looking this up right now but it's funny, when I look it up originally, I don't get football, I get baseball. But the football database coming to play. So the last few games,
he's 1-5.
Burrow playing this one. The season opener last year, Cleveland won 24-3. Cincinnati won in 2022, 23-10. But we all know that was a written off season for Cleveland. But besides that, yeah, Cleveland, Jacoby Brissett beat them 32-13. Week 17 and week 18, in 2022, 21-16. And then here's the other one. You're right, November 7th, 2021, 41-16. That was in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I see it. So yeah, so Burrow's only beaten Cleveland once. It was Deshaun Watson's first start, if I remember correctly, and it was in Cincinnati. He's never beaten them in Cleveland. So he's 1-5 total and only beaten them once. and it was at home. It was not on the road. So yeah, next week's a big spot for both teams. Like it feels like whoever loses that game, their season's going to feel over. So yeah, it's going to be a big spot.
Do you know the last time
Nick Chubb comes back too?
Ooh, yes, spicy spot. Do you know the last time that Cincinnati won a game in Cleveland was the season Cleveland went over?
0-16.
Yep, 0-16. They beat them 31-7. That was October 1st, 2017. So it's been almost 7 years since they last won in Cleveland. So these are just like, look, I don't know what happened yet. I got to give some time to figure it out, see how the week goes. But these are just things to consider. Other things I'm seeing here right now, too, just some quick betting lines. Rams versus Raiders. Rams are -5.5. I don't know if I want to buy into that just yet. But like I said, just because, too, we don't know what the Rams are. We don't know which team's going to come out. The Rams should handle it with ease. But, like, it's a potential Vegas spot to just like, hey, here we are. And then the only blinds aren't available, obviously, the teams that play tonight. But before we go, why are the Patriots a +4.5 underdog going into next week?
Yeah, and it was 5.5 originally too, because they're basically saying because the Jaguars have been there for a week because Jacksonville's staying in London, that it is sort of like competitive advantage. I think last year in the same exact situation, they played the Bills and they beat the Bills in London because they had been in London. Yeah, exactly. So that would be why. Obviously, the Patriots are going to be good value. A lot of people are going to pick the Patriots this upcoming week, I imagine, especially given how Drake may play. But I can understand it a little bit. It's like they've been in London for a week. That's an advantage. That's a body clock advantage over the other team.
I don't know. I don't have any reports, by the way, of when certain people are when the team's going to London. I know some reporters like how tomorrow Sophie. We're recording tomorrow night because she leaves for London on Wednesday. So I know there's I believe most reporters are heading out probably midweek. So I imagine the team probably is heading out hopefully sooner than later. I give props to Eberflus for leaving on Monday last week. Just coming and doing his thing. And then, by the way, bye weeks for this coming week: Chicago and Dallas. So I'm almost going to say this right now. You know how a couple weeks ago we talked about that we were wrong about the Chiefs losing to the Saints? What if the Niners beat the Chiefs this coming week, but then next week Dallas off the bye beats them in San Francisco?
Now, that would be bad for San Fran because the Cowboys game is more important for the standings. Obviously, there's like a human element where it's like, no, they got to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs are their arch rival, the team that robbed them of the Super Bowls.
Kryptonite.
But the Cowboys game is the one that's going to count in the conference record. So if you're a Niners fan, realistically, if you're going to go 1-1 over those two games, as bad as it's going to hurt, you would prefer to lose to the Chiefs instead of losing to the Cowboys, even though it will sting in the moment a little bit. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all. I'm going to be on the Niners next week, most likely. I have to do, the usual stuff, research it the whole week, but I imagine so. And then, yeah, I can definitely see the problem is going into that Cowboys game. We know how the NFL works. Like the talk all week is going to be Dallas can't beat San Fran. Dallas can't beat San Fran. Everyone's going to say it over and over and over again.
Last year got their asses kicked.
Yes, which was also on Sunday Night Football. It was around the same time. That was like week 5, week 6. So, yeah, like whenever the NFL community gets like unionized on something like that, usually they're overreacting. So, yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all if they beat the Chiefs and then lose to Dallas.
So I'm going to look up Dallas quickly just because I want to see what they have after this, because that's why everyone was calling Thursday night a must-win game for the Cowboys, because the Cowboys after this Chiefs, and they play the Chiefs and the Cowboys and they go in their bye week. So the Niners for the month of November, they have the Falcons, they have the Eagles, they have the Texans, which that's a huge game right there. That's a Monday Night Football game. Commanders, and then Giants on Thanksgiving, which obviously that's the standalone spot. But Big Rat, I'm going to let Big Rat enjoy his Thanksgiving. If anything, we'll be sicko enough to do the morning of the Panthers game because, God forbid.
The Dolphins also play that night, by the way, on top of everything else.
Oh, I meant the not Thanksgiving. I meant when the Giants play the Panthers. If anything, maybe you and I record that day. Okay. And then Bengals, Panthers, Buccaneers, Eagles, Commanders. So there's not a lot of breathing room for them where you look at many of the games where you're like, that's not even a must win, but it's not a lock.
Dallas's path to winning the division and having a good record this year is basically dominating the division games. Now, historically, Dak does really well in the NFC East, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But that's what it would take. I think they've had enough losses, and they have more losses that you project on the schedule outside of the division that their best path is going to be to like put up a 5-1 in the NFC East. You know, like one loss to the Commanders or something like that. Like we'll see what happens.
Their next home game, by the way, is not till week 10 when the Eagles come to town, and that's a 4:25 kick as well. Yeah. So that's a huge game right there for them. So I guess, like I only said, by the way, about the San Francisco thing, I know that's going to be a bigger game for San Fran and their fans. I only say that, though, just because the NFL is such a goofy, wonky thing to where I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the NFL's crazy enough that they could beat the Chiefs. They're the best team in the NFL, but then they lose to a worse team than the Chiefs at home the next week. Yeah, that's how the NFL works.
Before we go, I just want to see when the last time that the Cowboys beat the Niners. Which,
off the top of my head, they beat them in 2020, but that was with Dalton. That's when both teams didn't have their starting quarterbacks. I remember that game.
That's the one that got flexed out of primetime.
Yeah, the Cowboys had Dalton and the Niners had Nick Mullins. So it's not. They both had like 5 wins at that point, so it's not quite the same.
2017.
Wow.
Well, to be fair, they've only played 3 times since that 2020 game, and 2 of those were playoffs.
Yeah, those are the games that everyone remembers. Those are the games that make the biggest impact. They eliminated them from the playoffs in 2021, eliminated them from the playoffs in 2022, then beat the shit out of them on national TV on Sunday Night Football last year.
Yeah, like the playoff games weren't relatively blowouts. It was just dumb decisions by Dallas. Like the have Zeke Elliott going under center, Dak burning too much clock late in the game when they lost 23-17 and 19-12. But that was a 3 touchdown game last year where George Kittle, remember, he lifted the shirt up and they had to fuck Dallas underneath it. So that game in 2 weeks is going to be a lot of fun because both teams are going to be, I'm not going to say desperate, but it's a game where both teams are going to put their stamp on it to where it's either, hey, San Francisco is who we thought they were, or we get another Stephen A. Smith laughing his ass off video. So, it's either one or the other.
It's going to be fun. It's always high comedy when we see them.
It's always going to be fun, like a Danny Dimes in primetime. I know, folks, this wasn't exactly the episode you wanted, but Big Rat Still and I put together a great episode for you guys because that's what it was. We'll be back, though, Monday, October 28th with a better Danny Dimes in primetime when the Steelers play the Giants in primetime. Maybe the last ever one because we don't know what's going to happen with Daniel Jones. But you know what? Even if he's with another team, we'll follow him to there. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. This has been episode number 318 of YWC Football Talk. We'll see you tomorrow night with Sophie Weller as we get a little bit more into Drake May's rookie debut. Have a good night, everybody.